Hello everybody. People often say life is beautiful, but I say life is an encyclopedia of lessons. It not just teaches experiences, but also experiments on us at times. Let me take you with a journey of mine, and my journey was a journey completely of learning. And every time that I learn, prior to my learning, I always lived with the question, why? My birth, right from my birth, every moment I felt that this tag of why followed with me. When I was born, my birth might have not brought much happiness to my parents. Not because I was born, it's because I was born as the second girl child in my family. The first girl child who was born 8 years behind brought a lot of happiness to my parents as they turned up as a brand new mom and dad. But when I turned up, that made a natural fear on my mother that it would have been better if we would have a boy. And then it also made my father accept the fact that he has to struggle for the rest of his life. My father served the Indian Air Force, and in those days he was at the rank of a sergeant. And one has to also know that the services, the privileges that what an armed force personnel would have today was comparatively a bit less in those days. And when I grew up, at the age of 1, my mother already started running a typewriting institute. And in order to look after it, and as I was 1 year old, they left me at a dairy farm. That was a family which was running a dairy farm, not because that they couldn't leave me in a creche. The problem was they couldn't afford a creche. And they found that the dairy farm was quite better because it had big people there, having elders to look after, women who were working there. So they found that their daughter could be safe there. At one, my question of why started. Like, why is that they're leaving me over there? And as I was too young to know words of that why, and also too young to get an answer, I just lived there. My friends at that time were the cows and buffaloes. I enjoyed being with them too. But this question of why always mongered behind me. And once when I turned 7, when my mother sent me to get milk from another nearby dairy farm, there I found that the calf was being separated from the cow. I asked the milk person, what is that, why do you make the calf away? Then the milkman told me that it's just because if the mother has to start working, she has to be away from her kid. The answer for my why, which I had earlier, was answered now. When I turned up 9, when the concept of the property division came into picture, my dad was really a bit happy because he thought that once the property gets divided, he would get a good shelter for his family. But unfortunately, the legacy saying that boys can take up the legacy came into picture, for which we couldn't get the shelter from the property. Again, the question of why raised. As it raised in my mind, thinking, why is this saying that the legacy can be taken by a boy? I couldn't get the answer at that point of time. But after a few days, I overheard my father speaking to somebody, saying, I have 2 daughters, in which I see my 2 sons. Then my answer for my why raised up. Then I understood that it is not a rule of the legacy. The problem is the mindset of the people. And I was so happy enough that my father did not carry that mindset. Neither did my mother. As we move further, my dad somehow, with all his extra effort, and my mom with all her extra effort, they purchased another land. And in that land, rather than we going and staying there, they constructed small rooms so that they could earn some rents from that. And with those rents, my father started a small business of hollow bricks. He couldn't afford a mason for it, for which me, my sister, my father, and my mother used to work to construct those bricks. All the time we had concrete on our body. Sometimes our hands used to be blistered because of the cement, but then we continued doing it. And this had continued, and slowly our brick business also was taking off. But when I turned 12, the government officials came in, and by mistake, they mistook that our land which we purchased could be of government officials, and without a note, they demolished the entire rented houses that we have constructed and also demolished our brick business completely. By the time we could get the documents to show them, the situation turned irreversible. I saw my mom, my dad, my sister sobbing like hell. But I was still with the question, why? Because this time, my question was, now this land, this business is our effort. And why is our effort being broken? But then I had no answer because I couldn't ask anybody. Already my parents were sobbing, so I couldn't do anything of it. And as we passed on, our parents, after these all incidents, started making us do many jobs, like electric work, plumber work, sewage work, including a sewage work. My dad, my mom used to ask us to clean it. I'm not talking about the sewage, the normal line that the normal toilet or whatever you clean. It was not just that. Outside, if there was any clogging also of our house, they used to make us get down and do it. Every work, let it be carpenter, and I never saw an electrician coming home and doing any work. I never saw a plumber coming home and doing any work. I never saw a carpenter doing any work. What I saw, my dad, my mom, and we kids doing it. I, from childhood, aspired to be a journalist. I accept I had no good English, neither I had the confidence of being so. But then, I always had that zeal that I have to be a journalist. And how did I get that zeal? I just saw that Doordarshan channel that used to come, and there I used to see the news reporter, and I used to enact like them. I used to mug up lines from a newspaper, not knowing the meaning of it, and I used to try talking like them. But then, my parents had a different choice. At that time, they just wanted me to have a stable career, for which, and moreover, they also knew that they can't afford my dreams, for which they thought, let us put her into any professional degree, and engineering was their choice. They put me into intermediate, where they introduced me to the subjects called mathematics, physics, chemistry. None was my choice. I did not like any of them, as they all looked like big demons. They used to be ghosts at night for me. The derivations, the integration, the trigonometry was something like they would come and eat me at some point. This is how I lived with. And my helplessness, my hopelessness landed in my result. I couldn't do well because they were not of my choice. What was my choice was already known to me, that I wanted to be into journalism. This was what it always wandered over my head. And these things were completely new for me. But somehow, since I was put into that ocean, I sailed somehow, I hit my hands and legs into it and was handling it somehow. When I turned 16, I thought, now this is where I have to earn my own bugs as my pocket money, because I had to afford to buy my books, my small requirements. And I started going, I decided that I will take tuitions. And to my luck, I was teaching to students who was of my age again. To students who were again 16 years old, who were same in the intermediate second year. This time, I did not have why in my brain, because I had no confidence firstly on me, but I appreciated the confidence that the other parents put and left their kids to me. I took money from them for taking classes. At 22, in the mid of 2012, my mother had a massive brain stroke in the month of May because she couldn't take all this. And the very next month, my dad had a massive heart attack. Both came out of it. Luckily, but this time again the why did not come into my brain, because I was completely shattered, because two, mother and father at the same time sick and going to such a drastic situation, fearing whether they would come back safe or not. I stopped my job because I had to take care of them. My school started deteriorating because there was nobody there to take care of. My sister was married where we couldn't disturb more, but then she turned back. She came back and she stood as a support. And when she saw me serving my parents, she was the one who said, at home they call me Anu. She said, Anu, though you're doing all these things, that's fine, but you stopped your job, you stopped your engineering is done, you have to do something, if not you're going to get an academic gap. She was the one who enrolled me into my master program. I did, for 6 months, I concentrated on nothing. I was just taking care of my parents. But then, after 6 months, I decided that no, now it is no why for me. I have to start a new chapter of life. What has happened, but now I have to take things further. I deliberately made the courage and got that school closed. I did not allow my parents to go back to that school and start it over. I asked my dad to stop working. I did not like when my dad went to another school, being an owner of a small school though. I did not like him going and working for somebody else because he had to obey rules there. A person who was making rules at his place had to go and obey rules at some other's place. I did not want him to do that. I said, no, you will not go for work. I asked my mom, you will be at home for a few days. I went back, opened my institute. The school building was I completely closed it. I removed every material from there. I opened my school, I turned it into an institute. And this time, what shy I had earlier of doing the job of a mason, doing the job of an electrician, being into the concrete, this time I had no shy in me. To be honest, I'm using the wrong word saying I had no shy in me. But it wasn't there. The term shy is not to say what it actually means. It meant to say that I drew courage. What I did at that time, I went at morning 5, put pamphlets in the newspaper. Didn't bother who is looking at me. Didn't bother what's going on around at me. Didn't bother who is going to look at me and then would it affect my institute. I didn't bother about anything. I couldn't afford an attender. I used to go and sweep my own institute so that I be ready by the students come in. Ran the institute. Initially, I had no students. And then I decided the mathematics that I'm scared of, today it would turn up my strength and let me teach maths there. And that was how I started. My parents, within 6 months, they also bounced back on their feet. And once we moved ahead, my sister came in my support, looking after to help me out, taking care of my parents as well. And I was completely concentrating on the institute, which I started saying, no, I have to do something now. That was where my mini entrepreneurism started on me. And then as we moved ahead, initially I had no students, hardly 2 benches used to get filled, 2-3 cycles outside, not much students. It just continued. At 23, I struggled hard from morning 5 to night 12. My question which I had in those days saying, why don't I see my mom and dad after coming home from school? Today when I stood on that position, looking after a small business, I understood that I have to give my time here. And then my answer of that was now. And as we moved ahead, by the age of 24, the place which had only 2 cycles now had problem of parking. We had many cars, scooters, bikes parked outside. The benches which I just saw with two benches being filled now had students filled in. The ground floor, the first floor, completely full. We had to keep CCTV cameras in order to handle situation, in order to handle students. We had to take a separate rented building, few shutters, in order to place students there. We started gradually bouncing back, and things started getting better. And that, along with that betterment, my confidence level that yes, I can do something has also increased. As we moved ahead, things started getting better. And at 26, when I purchased my own car, and I gave the key to into my dad's hand and made my dad drive it, and my mom sitting next to him. My dad felt as if he's sitting in a Land Rover or a Jaguar. The smile on his face was so high and so priceless. And my mom, who was at that time very feeble, who used to not talk in society, she started feeling strong. Earlier by the age of 24, I registered for Ph.D. That change of me registering for Ph.D. made her stand like a strong lady. Though my dad was a military man, my mom looked like a soldier. Because this time she felt that her muscles are strong. And the lady who never spoke outside in society, nor in family, nor outside, she said, now I'm going to live. At 27, when I and my husband, who was at that time a master's friend, who saw all my struggle, he was my spine too. He understood my situation all the time. And in order to make my family accept that we wanted to live together, our parents put us into a situation saying, buy a house and then say that you're worth living together. I, this time, was not unshattered. I was really fine with it because I felt it's just a house they are asking to purchase. This is how we worked. And today, at the age of 30, when I stand as an academician, having a small institute still running where my parents at one time which used it as their earning, today teach kids who cannot afford to pay fees. They're still running it because they know the pain of being helpless, and I feel really proud that they are still running it. And not with the aspect of earning bucks, but in the aspect of helping. And at the age of 30 today, being the author of 2 computer science textbooks, being into reviewing journals, chairing conferences in the international level, having my own blog. The bug of blog was because my journalist aspiration did not die. I put all my content there. Writing articles for different magazines, I always felt life which was at one time a nightmare for me started turning up as sweet memories. And with every of my sweet memory, I had a lesson learned from each of them. The generation thinks that what our parents give is what we turn up. I would say no. How we look at it is what we turn up. But later, as days passed on, I started thanking my grandparents, saying, good that you have did not give me the legacy. Good that you felt that we were unfit to take the legacy forward. I was happy. Literally, I was really happy that they did so, because that helped me to be strong. I was happy that the government demolished our land, because they could just demolish our land, our property, but they have built a new willpower in us. I felt superior than those rich real estate people, because they turned rich by trespassing lands. I turned rich with my knowledge, my education. Teaching, which at one time was the cause of my survival, turned up as a passion for me today. And I am proud to be what I am today. The young generation here, I always just say that please be optimistic towards learning. And whatever comes your life, do not miss doing it. Life is full of opportunities. When God closes a particular door, He opens something. But do not just sit into your depressive mode saying, no, I can't do it, or put the blame on somebody for doing it. Everything happens for a cause. And accept that fact, and please go ahead in life. Thank you.